Emma, give your stepdad a chance. He's trying. That's what my mom begged me to believe. But Robert, the man who calls himself my stepdad, isn't who he pretends to be. He thought he could take over my dad's home. He thought he could use my mom. He thought he could bully me out of my own father's home. So I smiled, stayed quiet, and started a war he never saw coming. Before we dive into the story, tell me, where are you watching from? I'd love to know. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel so you never miss a story like this. It was 8:15 in the morning. The sun was just waking up over the rooftops of Belmar Lakewood, casting long, soft shadows across the quiet street. I pulled into the driveway of 214 Benton Street, my stomach twisting with a mix of anger and disbelief. Everything about this morning felt wrong, heavy, like the air itself was warning me. It had been a year since Dad passed away, a year since I lost the man who built this house, who taught me how to ride my bike, who tucked me in when I was scared. I thought I'd be able to feel some peace. But today, like every day for the past 3 weeks, peace didn't exist here anymore. Sarah, my beautiful, loving mom, had brought someone new into our lives. His name was Robert, and from the very first moment he stepped through that door, he acted like he owned everything, like our home wasn't my dad's, like my memories didn't matter. I watched him from the kitchen window as he leaned against the counter, scrolling on his phone. His jacket was crumpled, his shoes muddy. He didn't even notice the crumbs on the floor, the hair scattered in the bathroom, the cup he left half full on the living room table. It was like he didn't see the life Dad had built, like he didn't care. I stepped inside, trying to keep my voice calm. "Morning," I said. Mom was in the living room, smiling at him like he was the most important thing in the world. And there I was, invisible. "Good morning," Robert muttered, not even looking up. He left his plate in the sink, streaks of syrup marking the countertop. A single sock was lying in the hallway. I gritted my teeth. This was the house Dad loved. This was the house I had grown up in. And now, it felt like a stranger had moved in. And Mom didn't even notice. I walked past the living room and into the hallway, careful not to let him see my frustration. My eyes caught a trail of hair in the bathroom, a thin, stubborn line across the counter, like he didn't even try to clean after himself. My fingers twitched. I wanted to scream. I wanted to wipe it all away, make it disappear. But I didn't. Not yet. Because I knew I had to watch. I had to see what he was really about. I went upstairs to my old room. I used to love this room. Now every corner reminded me of Dad and the life we had before Robert showed up. My heart sunk when I saw Mom talking to him in the hallway, laughing at something I didn't understand. She was happy, but not with me, not with the memories, not with Dad, just with him. I didn't say anything. I just watched, silently, heart tightening with every laugh, every look Robert gave her that wasn't mine. And then I noticed something. A folder, half hidden, sticking out from the corner of the desk. The papers inside were stamped, official, important. My heart thudded in my chest. I could see the glint of greed in his eyes. He thought no one was watching. He had no idea. I swallowed hard, my hands shaking. I had to act, but how? And more importantly, what was he planning with my father's things? I pressed my back against the wall, barely breathing, trying to process it all. I wanted to confront him, to protect Dad's memory, to protect our home. But right now, I was powerless. For now. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about messes anymore. This was bigger, much bigger. I didn't know what Robert was after, but I was going to find out. And I knew, deep down, this was only the beginning. It was 7:30 in the evening. The sky outside 214 Benton Street, Lakewood, Colorado, had turned a soft orange, fading slowly into pink, and the street lamps were flickering to life. The house was quiet now. Robert had left for work, leaving Mom in the living room, singing softly while scrolling on her phone. I knew this was my chance. I crept down the hallway, my feet making no sound on the hardwood floors. My heart beat faster, not from fear, but from the anticipation of what I was about to uncover. I pushed the bathroom door open slowly, and the sight that met me made my stomach twist. Hair was scattered across the sink, the counter, even clinging to the edges of the bathtub. The floor had little streaks and drops that made me shiver. He hadn't cleaned up anything. But toilet, I didn't even want to look, but I had to see the full truth. It wasn't flushed. The seat had marks, and the floor bore evidence of his carelessness. I closed my eyes for a moment and took a deep breath. This wasn't just laziness. This was disrespect. This was someone who thought this house, this home built by my father, didn't matter. And my mom, she still smiled at him. She still laughed at his jokes, completely blind to what was happening right in front of her. I grabbed my phone quietly and started taking pictures. Every hair, every stain, every small mess was recorded. I wanted proof. Proof that he wasn't just careless, that he wasn't just a man adjusting to a new home, that he was crossing lines. My hands shook slightly, but my resolve was strong. I moved to the kitchen. There, it was no better. Greasy counters, crumbs and corners, a half-eaten sandwich left on the table, cups with lipstick stains, unwashed spoons in the sink. It was a trail of carelessness that couldn't be ignored. I snapped more pictures. Each click of the camera was like a small victory. But as I examined the counters, my eyes caught something else. A folder, one I hadn't noticed before, lying on the edge of the table. It was a thick manila folder, stamped with official seals and labeled with my father's name. My pulse quickened. I edged closer. Robert didn't love Mom. I could see it now, clear as day. His eyes weren't lingering on her laugh or the way she stirred her coffee. They were scanning, searching, calculating. And this folder? It wasn't just any folder. It contained my father's inheritance documents, the papers that ensured our family's security, the papers that Robert had no right to touch. I felt a mix of anger and fear. What was he planning? Was he trying to take what wasn't his? Was Mom just a pawn in whatever game he was playing? My fists clenched. I had to protect what Dad had built, what he had left behind for us. I stepped back, heart racing. Every small mess, every little act of laziness suddenly felt like a part of a bigger picture. This wasn't random carelessness. It was calculated. Robert wasn't just lazy. He was testing boundaries, mapping out a plan, and if I didn't act carefully, I could lose control of everything that mattered to me. I took one last look around the bathroom and kitchen, memorizing every detail, every unclean spot. This was my starting line. I wasn't going to let him win. I wasn't going to let him take over my home or my family. I swore silently to myself, every word sharp in my mind. If he thinks he can live like this, he's about to learn a lesson he'll never forget. But as I backed out of the kitchen, I noticed a shadow move in the corner of my eye, a reflection in the window from the street outside. My stomach sunk. I froze. Was it just a neighbor walking by, or had Robert left something behind, some clue that he knew I was watching? And in that moment, I realized one terrifying truth. I wasn't just dealing with laziness or mess anymore. I was dealing with someone who had plans, and I had to uncover them before it was too late. The next morning, the first soft light of dawn crept through the blinds of 214 Benton Street, Lakewood, CO. The house was quiet, still asleep, except for the sound of the refrigerator and the distant chirping of birds outside. I moved carefully through the kitchen, thought. I grabbed his dirty laundry from the hamper, socks, shirts, even a crumpled towel from the bathroom. I didn't just toss them somewhere random. No, I hid them in places that would confuse him the most. A sock under the couch cushion, a shirt hanging halfway out of the oven, a towel draped over the stair railing. Each placement felt like a tiny victory, a small secret I alone understood. Then I turned my attention to the bathroom. Robert had left his toothbrush out, bristles splayed, wet, smelling faintly of toothpaste and morning breath. I replaced it carefully with an old, used one I'd found in the back of a drawer. Not harmful, just memorable. Every time he went to brush his teeth, he would notice, but he wouldn't know why. I smiled to myself. That was the point. I pulled out my phone and sent the first of many photos to Mom, a subtle reminder of the mess he left behind. A picture of the unflushed toilet, the scattered hair on the bathroom counter, the messy kitchen plate with syrup still smeared across the edge. Mom, busy with work and her morning coffee, responded with a short, "Thanks, Emma," unaware of the brewing storm. The kitchen smelled faintly of burnt toast, and I noticed a crumb trail from yesterday's breakfast. I rearranged the chair slightly, nudged the sugar jar a little to the side. Nothing big, nothing dangerous, just small hints that someone was paying attention, someone was watching. Then I heard it, the front door opening. My stomach jumped. Robert was home early, or maybe he had left something behind, returned for a reason. I ducked behind the counter, pretending to be busy wiping a dish, though the truth was, I was watching every movement he made. He walked into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes, still half asleep, muttering something under his breath. And then it happened. He reached for his shirt and froze. His eyes darted around the room, scanning the oven, the couch, the stair railing. His hand trembled slightly as he pulled out his sock from under the cushion. "Where?" he muttered. His voice was low, confused, frustrated. Who is messing with me?" I bit the inside of my cheek to stop myself from laughing out loud. Dark humor bubbled in me, a little spark of satisfaction that warmed the edges of my anger. He didn't even realize yet that I was the one orchestrating all of this, that it was me, carefully, quietly, taking back a little piece of my house every day. I moved to the hallway, leaving behind another subtle clue. A towel folded incorrectly, just slightly off, a little messy, but not enough to be noticed immediately. The plan was simple. Let him feel the confusion, the irritation, the tiny unease that comes from not having total control. Robert's steps grew faster as he moved from room to room, checking, picking up, sniffing, turning things over. The panic in his eyes was just enough to make me grin without anyone noticing. I knew I had started something he couldn't explain, something he couldn't see coming. I lingered by the counter, pretending to sip my coffee while he muttered again, louder this time. Who the hell is messing with me?" My heart raced. This was only the beginning. A small battle, yes, but a necessary one. Every tiny prank, every subtle rearrangement, every picture I sent to Mom was a thread in a bigger plan. I was planting the seeds, and soon they would grow into a storm he couldn't escape. And I knew, deep down, that today he had felt the first taste of a reality he wasn't ready for. My house, my rules, my dad's legacy. It was 11:30 at night. The house was quiet, bathed in the soft glow of the streetlights filtering through the blinds. Mom was asleep in her room, her soft breathing filling the hallway, and the house felt mine again. For now. I moved carefully into the living room, my footsteps silent on the carpet. My eyes scanned the room. The coffee table had his favorite snacks, a half-eaten bag of chips, a chocolate bar unwrapped and forgotten. The remote controls for the TV were lying on the sofa, scattered and mismatched, and there, in the corner, a pair of his shoes, not in the closet where they belonged, but right in the middle of the room. A small, mischievous smile tugged at my lips. Tonight, I wasn't just cleaning up after him. I was setting the stage. Slowly, carefully, I began moving things. I switched the remotes, the one for the TV and the sound system. I hid his snacks behind books on the shelf. I nudged his shoes slightly, out of place, but noticeable if he looked. Tiny changes, subtle hints that someone was watching, someone was paying attention. But I wasn't just playing a game. I had a plan. I pulled my phone from my pocket and snapped a few pictures, quick videos of the snacks, the misplaced items, the shoes. This was evidence. Evidence that would protect Mom and show her the truth, that Robert's laziness wasn't harmless, that it was a pattern, a behavior he thought he could hide. I paused and listened. The house was still, but I could almost feel Robert's presence lingering, even though he was asleep in his room. I imagined his reaction in the morning, confusion, frustration, maybe even panic. The thought made my chest tighten with a mix of anticipation and dark satisfaction. A creak on the stairs made me freeze. My eyes darted toward the hallway. Robert had gotten up. He moved carefully, almost like a shadow, muttering under his breath. I know someone's messing with me." The words were low, almost a whisper, but I heard them. My heart beat faster. He was starting to notice. The paranoia I had been planting like seeds was beginning to grow. He wasn't blaming himself. Oh no, he was blaming ghosts, luck, bad timing, everything but the truth. I kept moving objects, small adjustments here and there. A cushion nudged slightly to the side. A lamp tilted ever so slightly. The TV remote hidden under a magazine. Each little act made him question reality. Each subtle change was a tiny puzzle only I knew the solution to. Then I heard it, a low voice from the hallway. Robert was on the phone, whispering hurriedly. I pressed myself against the wall, heart racing. I couldn't make out everything, but I caught bits of the conversation. "Yeah, I need to handle it. She's watching too much. My plan can't fail." My stomach tightened. Who was he talking to? What plan? And why did it sound like he was trying to manipulate Mom? I tiptoed closer, careful not to be seen. His shadow stretched across the carpet, his back to me as he continued the conversation. The tension in his voice sent a shiver down my spine. Robert wasn't just careless or lazy. He was scheming, and now I had proof, without him knowing, that he had intentions far bigger than messes and laziness. I pressed record on my phone quietly, capturing his words, his tone, his plotting. This was more than evidence. This was the truth he thought he could hide. And I wasn't about to let him. I backed away slowly, heart hammering, trying to stay calm. I had to think carefully. One wrong move, one creak of the floorboards, and he could discover me here. But the thought of him plotting while thinking I was oblivious made my resolve even stronger. This was just the beginning. The house war had started, and I was ready to fight smart. Every small action, every observation, every hidden camera was a piece of the puzzle. Robert didn't even realize he was already losing. It was 10:15 on a quiet Sunday morning. The sunlight poured softly through the blinds of 214 Benton Street, Lakewood, Colorado, catching the steam rising from the coffee cups on the counter. The house smelled faintly of burnt toast and syrup, evidence of Robert's cooking experiment for brunch. I stood by the sink, quietly wiping the countertop while he fumbled with the stove. The eggs he tried to fry were burnt on one side and raw on the other. A faint layer of grease coated the pan, and the smoke alarm had gone off twice already. Mom, as usual, didn't notice any of it. She smiled at him, laughed at his jokes, and ruffled his hair like he was the most charming man in the world. I felt a tight knot in my chest. This was my home. Dad had built this life, and Robert treated it like it was just a playground for his laziness and mistakes. And Mom was blind, completely blind to everything that was happening right under her nose. I silently moved around the kitchen, cleaning up the little disasters he left behind. Crumbs on the table, syrup smeared on the counter, a spatula with remnants of burnt eggs. Each movement felt like a small rebellion, a quiet way to reclaim a part of my house while he carried on, oblivious. "Emma, don't be so serious," Mom said suddenly, turning toward me with a bright smile. "Look at him. He's trying. Give him a chance, sweetheart." I froze for a moment. Trying? This wasn't trying. This was carelessness, laziness, and disrespect. My frustration bubbled, but I forced a polite nod. I couldn't argue. Not now. Mom's happiness, even if misplaced, had to come first. Robert turned toward me grinning as if he had just won a small victory. "See? I'm doing great, right? Breakfast is almost perfect." I bit back a laugh and shook my head silently, focusing instead on cleaning up the mess he ignored. Each burnt egg was a reminder of how he thought he could take over, how he thought Mom's attention was enough to cover for everything else. As I wiped the counter near the stove, my eyes caught something unusual. A folder had been left on the edge of the kitchen counter, not by accident, I was sure. It was thick, manila, with papers peeking out from the top. I hesitated for a second, heart pounding, knowing I shouldn't touch it, but curiosity and concern overpowered caution. I leaned closer. The folder had Robert's handwriting on it, and I recognized the bold stamps and seals from Dad's old documents. Mortgage papers, inheritance files, legal forms. My stomach dropped. Robert wasn't just lazy. He wasn't just careless. He was plotting. And Mom? Mom was blind, completely blind to everything that was happening right under her nose. I took a deep breath and picked up the folder carefully. The papers rustled in my hands, a soft, threatening whisper of secrets waiting to be uncovered. My mind raced. Was he planning to manipulate Mom? Was he trying to take what didn't belong to him? The thought sent a shiver down my spine. I glanced at him as he continued flopping eggs onto a plate, mumbling to himself about the perfect brunch. He looked so innocent, so charming in Mom's eyes, yet behind that smile, I could see the careful planning, the greed, the patience in his eyes. I slipped the folder under the counter, hiding it for now. I had to act smart. One wrong move could alert him. One misstep could give him time to cover his tracks. But one thing was clear. The battle had just grown bigger. This was no longer about messy eggs or dirty socks. This was about protecting my family, protecting my father's legacy, and proving the truth to Mom before it was too late. As I wiped the last crumb from the table, I felt a sense of determination settle over me. I had to be patient, I had to be clever, and I had to be ready. The new week had just began. It was 8 in the morning, and the sunlight was soft, just beginning to spill across the living room carpet. The house was quiet. Mom was still in her room, probably scrolling through her phone, and Robert was out of sight, or so I thought. I carried my tiny camera carefully, placing it behind the bathroom counter where he wouldn't notice. It was small, almost invisible, but perfect for catching every detail of what he thought was private. My heart raced with excitement. This was the start of something big. I crouched low, moving silently as I set up the little traps. A few strands of hair here and there on his toothbrush, sticky soap swapped into his favorite shower dispenser, a tiny pile of unwashed towels hidden under the bathroom mat, just enough that he would notice when he stepped on it. Every detail was deliberate, every placement carefully planned. I stepped back and looked around. Everything was ready. The traps were small, subtle, but effective. I smiled to myself. This wasn't about hurting him. It was about showing him that his laziness and carelessness had consequences. Clever, quiet consequences. I retreated to my room, heart pounding, and watched the camera feed on my phone. Moments later, I saw him enter the bathroom. His face immediately changed. A frown, a sniff, a mutter. What is going on?" he grumbled. He picked up the toothbrush, examined it, and his eyes widened. He touched the soap,
made a face, and sniffed at it. The sticky residue made him scrunch his nose. Then he stepped on the mat. The hidden towels shifted slightly, brushing against his feet. He jumped back, muttering to himself, pacing the bathroom. Am I losing it? He whispered. He looked around as if the walls themselves were playing tricks on him. I pressed record again, trying to stifle my laughter. He was obsessing over cleanliness, complaining about the mess, the odd smells, the sticky soap, and all the while he remained the same lazy, careless man who left hair in the sink and dishes in the sink for days. The irony made my chest tighten with a mix of dark humor and satisfaction. After a few minutes, he left the bathroom, muttering under his breath. I watched as he went from room to room, checking corners, sniffing at the counter, glaring at the slightly moved chairs and hidden snacks from last night. His paranoia was growing, and I knew this was exactly the effect I wanted. I took a deep breath, feeling a rush of both relief and excitement. This was the first big trap. Not dangerous, not cruel, but clever. It set the stage for everything that was coming. Robert didn't know it yet, but every small act of carelessness, every lazy habit he had was being turned against him, subtly, cleverly, without anyone else knowing. I checked the camera again, watching him pace and mutter to himself. He was beginning to suspect that someone was watching. Someone was paying attention, but he couldn't put his finger on it. He didn't know who was behind it. I pulled out my phone and typed a quick message to my friend, grinning at the thought of sharing the secret. He's losing it. Just wait until Friday. The words felt heavy, like a promise, but also light, like a joke only I understood. This was only the beginning, and I could feel it. I sat back in my chair, heart still racing, imagining his confusion tomorrow, the day after that, and the day after that. Every tiny prank, every clever trap was part of a bigger plan. He thought he was in control, but I was watching, I was waiting, and I was ready.
Friday evening arrived, and the sky over 214 Benton Street, Lakewood, Colorado, glowed soft shades of pink and orange. I had been preparing all week for this night, the night that could finally expose Robert in front of everyone. The backyard was alive with string lights, flickering like tiny stars, and the barbecue grill smelled of sizzling burgers and marinated chicken. Friends and family were arriving soon, laughter and chatter drifting through the Belmar neighborhood as they stepped out of their cars. I moved silently inside the house, checking my carefully planned traps one last time. The kitchen looked normal at first glance, but the evidence was subtly there. Small spills on the counter, slightly sticky handles, misplaced utensils. The bathroom had a hidden pile of towels that would make Robert squirm when he noticed them. And the snacks? Oh, the snacks. Carefully left out in positions that would make him panic if he touched them. Every detail was perfect. Mom was busy greeting our guests with her warm smile, oblivious to the tension building in the house. She laughed at Robert's jokes as he fumbled with the serving trays, trying to appear confident. But I could see the small cracks in his charm, the sweat on his brow, the way his hands shook slightly as he picked up the skewers. I slipped into the corner of the kitchen, phone in hand, watching the hidden camera feeds. Robert wandered from the kitchen to the living room, muttering under his breath, checking snacks and wiping surfaces that didn't need cleaning. His paranoia was growing exactly as I had hoped. He was starting to feel the pressure, and it was delicious to watch. I focused on the backyard. The guests were laughing, playing games, clinking glasses. I could hear their voices carrying over the soft music I had set up. Everything looked perfect. It was casual, fun, normal, except for the tension I knew Robert was feeling. I imagined his confusion when he noticed the small, deliberate mistakes I had left for him. And then it happened. Through the kitchen window, I saw him outside, standing near the fence, talking to Mr. Thompson, our neighbor. Their voices were low at first, but then I heard it clearly. "You can't park your car there. Move it now." Robert was shouting. Mr. Thompson raised his hands, clearly trying to calm him down. "It's just a spot for the barbecue, Robert. Calm down." Robert's face was red, his hands flailing as he gestured wildly. I could feel my stomach tighten, both from amusement and suspense. His temper was flaring over something so minor, exactly what I wanted. A small, controlled chaos that would reveal his true nature to everyone. I ducked behind the counter, trying not to laugh too loudly. Mom was still inside, unaware of the confrontation outside. Guests were starting to glance toward the backyard, curious about the shouting. My heart raced. Would Robert realize he was being watched? Would he lose control completely in front of everyone? I checked my phone feed. His movements were unpredictable. He was pacing back and forth, muttering, waving his arms at the neighbor. I could see it in every gesture, the tension, the confusion, the growing panic. And I knew that this night, carefully planned and quietly set up, was going to push him closer to exposure than ever before. The air was thick with suspense. The guests were laughing, oblivious to the storm brewing nearby, and Robert had no idea that every step, every outburst, every gesture was quietly being recorded and carefully observed. He thought he was in control, but the game was slipping right out of his hands. Wednesday night came with a quiet chill, the kind that made the whole house feel still. The street outside, 214 Benton Street, Lakewood, was calm, with only the soft sound of cars far in the distance. But inside our house, the air felt thick, almost heavy, because Robert was slowly losing his calm. By 10 p.m., everyone was supposed to be asleep. Mom had already turned in early, tired from work, but I stayed awake on purpose, pretending to scroll on my phone in the dark, waiting, listening, watching. I knew something was coming. I could feel it deep in my chest like a slow drumbeat. And then I heard it, a soft creak on the hallway floor, then another. Slow steps, careful steps, steps that didn't belong to Mom. I held my breath. My room door wasn't fully shut, just cracked enough for me to hear and see shadows. And then I saw him, Robert, standing right outside my room, his silhouette long and still against the hallway light. He waited there, listening, breathing. Then he pushed the door open. I kept my eyes half closed, pretending to sleep. My heart was pounding so loud I was scared he could hear it. Robert walked in slow, his socks brushing the carpet. He looked around my room like a detective in some late-night movie. His eyes were sharp, searching every corner, every shelf, every tiny space. He opened my dresser drawers, checked under my bed, looked behind my curtains. It took everything in me not to laugh when he pulled out my laundry basket and jumped back like he expected something to pop out of it. He was whispering to himself, voice low and shaky, "Something's off. She's doing something. I know it." I kept still, but inside, I wanted to smile. My plan was working. But he found nothing, absolutely nothing, because I never left the real evidence in my room. When he finally walked out, I watched him through the crack, his shoulders tense, his head shaking like he couldn't believe how empty-handed he was. And that's when I added the next layer to his growing fears. Earlier that day, I had placed tiny clues around the house, not enough to expose me, but enough to make him question himself. A single hair strand on the sink edge, even though I hadn't used it. A spoon placed upside down on the table. A remote control sitting on top of the fridge. A towel folded in a shape only he used. Little things, light things, but powerful things. He noticed them all. By the time he reached the living room, he was rubbing his head, pacing back and forth like a character from a spooky movie who was sure the house was haunted. And honestly, watching him talk to himself like that almost made me laugh out loud. "Someone's moving stuff. Someone is doing this on purpose," he whispered. "And I know who." His eyes moved slowly down the hallway toward my room again, but this time, instead of coming toward me, he walked into the kitchen and opened the fridge door like he needed something to calm down. I could hear him breathing hard, mumbling under his breath. "She thinks she's smart, but I'm smarter. I'm going to catch her." He slammed the fridge shut and stood still for a long moment, staring into the hallway mirror. His reflection looked tired, stressed, and desperate. It was working. Everything was working. And he didn't even know I was watching every step. I stepped back from my door just in time as he turned around. I climbed into bed, pulled my blanket up, and pretended to be asleep again. He passed by my room one more time, this time slower, whispering words he thought no one would hear. His voice was low but sharp. "I'm going to catch her. She's not going to get away with this." My heart didn't speed up, not even one bit, because he had no idea that the real game was only beginning. As he walked away, I reached under my bed and pulled out a small SD card, the new video proof I had captured that same night, and I whispered to myself, "Let's see who catches who." It was 5 p.m. on a Saturday at 214 Benton Street, Lakewood, Colorado, and the sunlight was fading into the soft golden glow of early evening. I sat cross-legged on my bedroom floor, surrounded by piles of photos, videos, and screenshots I had taken over the past few weeks. Each one was a piece of the puzzle, a little window into Robert's laziness, his careless habits, and the tiny ways he thought he could get away with anything. I spread everything out carefully, snapshots of unflushed toilets, photos of sticky soap and hair in his toothbrush, pictures of the snacks he had left out and forgotten, video clips of him muttering to himself, pacing around the kitchen, and panicking over minor things. Every small detail counted, every frame was a story, and now, finally, I could see it all together. This was my ultimate weapon. The moment I showed Mom, she wouldn't be able to ignore it. She would see clearly that Robert wasn't the charming man she thought he was. He was careless, entitled, and only concerned with himself. My chest tightened with a mix of nervousness and satisfaction. After months of small pranks, little traps, and careful observation, this was the moment that could change everything. I placed each photo and clip into a folder on my laptop, labeling them carefully so I could find anything I needed in seconds. I even made a separate folder for the worst moments, the ones I was saving for later, the ones that would make Robert's behavior undeniable when Mom finally saw it. I leaned back for a second, rubbing my eyes and letting out a quiet breath. My plan was finally coming together, but as I looked up at my bedroom door, my heart skipped a beat. The door was slightly open. I froze. Robert. I heard his footsteps outside my room, slow and deliberate. I could hear him sniffing the air, muttering to himself, "She's hiding something. I can feel it." My pulse jumped. I had to stay calm. I pressed the laptop to the side, sliding the SD cards and photos under my bed just in time. He leaned against the wall, peering into the room like he was trying to see through everything I had done. His eyes scanned the floor, then the desk, then the closet. I could hear him whispering again, almost like he was talking to himself. "There's something. She's planning. I know it." I bit my lip to stop a nervous laugh. His paranoia was growing exactly as I had hoped. Every little trap, every misplaced object, every clue I had left for him, it was all working. He was beginning to realize that he wasn't in control, and that realization alone was priceless. I stayed perfectly still, pretending to scroll through my phone, heart pounding so loudly I thought he might hear it. Minutes passed like hours. I could see him pacing slightly outside the door now, scratching his head, whispering to himself about what I might be hiding. Finally, he muttered again, loud enough that I could hear it clearly. "Whatever she's hiding, I must find out." And just like that, he turned and walked away, muttering under his breath about how he would find it. I waited until his footsteps faded before I let myself breathe again, my chest heaving with a mix of excitement and relief. I crawled back to the laptop and pulled the photos and clips out from under the bed, placing them in order again. Everything was ready. This was the proof I needed. Soon, Mom would see it all, and she would understand the truth about Robert. I couldn't help but smile, imagining her reaction, imagining Robert's panic when he finally realized how clever I had been. But even as I felt that surge of satisfaction, I knew the night wasn't over. Robert's paranoia was only growing, and he would be watching more closely than ever.
The sun had barely climbed above the rooftops when the clock struck 7:15 a.m. at 214 Benton Street. I could hear the laughter and chatter of our guests in the backyard as I peeked through the kitchen doorway. Today was the family brunch, a casual gathering I had promised Mom I'd help with. But secretly, this was the moment I had been planning for weeks. Robert, in his usual attempt to impress everyone, had taken over the cooking. He wore that smug smile, confident in his skills, flipping pancakes and stirring eggs as if he were hosting a TV show. I watched him carefully from the counter, my phone tucked under my hand, ready to capture every detail. The first sign of trouble came with the pancakes. Smoke began curling from the pan, a small, innocent wisp at first, but it quickly grew into a faint haze filling the kitchen. Robert waved his hand frantically, muttering, it's fine, just a little extra flavor." I quietly adjusted my camera, zooming in on his face, capturing every moment. Guests were starting to notice the faint smoke as well, moving closer to the doorway to see what was happening. I could feel a small thrill run through me. This was the start of the chaos I had planned. Then came the eggs. Robert had forgotten to check the stove's heat, and within seconds the eggs began to stick, blackening on the pan. The smell hit the room, a burnt, acrid scent that made a few of the neighbors wrinkle their noses. He tried to salvage them, but it was too late. The eggs were ruined. I stifled a laugh and pretended to be busy setting the table. Guests were now glancing around, curiosity flickering in their eyes. Some of them whispered to each other, and I knew they were noticing Robert's flustered movements. But the best part was still to come. I had subtly set up the bathroom trap earlier. The unwashed towels, the misplaced toiletries, and the small pile of evidence I had left intentionally. It was all waiting for the moment when Robert, in his panic, would dash to check the house. And sure enough, the smoke and the smell sent him running toward the bathroom. He opened the door, only to step inside and freeze. The towels were in disarray, the soap slippery and sticky, and the little clues I had left were obvious to anyone who knew the house. Guests who had followed him were stifling giggles. I watched as Robert's face went red, eyes wide, fumbling to fix the mess. "Emma," he shouted suddenly, pointing at me, Did you do this?" I stayed calm, keeping my voice steady, though my heart raced. Mom was standing just behind him, a frown forming as she took in the chaos. "Robert," she said slowly, trying to understand, "what happened here?" He stumbled, trying to explain, tripping over words. I don't know. It wasn't me. It maybe someone." I held my tongue, letting the evidence speak for itself. The guests were now openly whispering and glancing at each other. Neighbors, friends, family, everyone could see it now. The confident, charming man had lost control completely. Mom looked at me uncertainly, confusion and worry crossing her face. Emma, did you do something? I shook my head gently, voice calm. No, Mom. Look at this. Look at what's happening. The moment hung in the air, tense and electric. Everyone could see it now, Robert's carelessness, his lack of attention, and the chaos that followed him wherever he went. I could feel the satisfaction bubbling quietly inside me, but I knew this was only the beginning. Robert tried to regain composure, but the more he moved, the worse it looked. Plates clattered, napkins fell, and the smell of burnt eggs filled the room. His face twisted with embarrassment, fumbling words and stammering excuses that no one believed. I stayed calm, letting him dig his own hole, capturing every moment. The public humiliation was perfect. He had tried to impress everyone, and instead he had exposed himself completely. Sunday evening settled over 214 Benton Street, Lakewood, with the sky painted in shades of orange and purple. The soft hum of distant traffic and the occasional bark of a dog gave the neighborhood a calm, quiet feeling. But inside our house, calm didn't exist. Not tonight. It was 8:30 p.m., and I could hear Robert moving frantically in the kitchen. The smell of burnt eggs from the brunch still lingered faintly, and the faint smoke smell had mixed with his hurried scrubbing. He was wiping counters, throwing away leftovers, and muttering to himself, as if the faster he moved, the faster he could erase the evidence of his mistakes. I stayed in my room at first, pretending to be on my phone, but my heart was pounding with excitement. This was the perfect moment to push him just a little further, enough to expose him, but without making Mom notice my hand in it. I started planting more little accidents around the house. The trash bin in the kitchen was already full, so I carefully added a few more papers and old food scraps until it overflowed, teetering dangerously. A few unwashed dishes sat near the sink, strategically stacked to make the pile look messy but noticeable. I even left the bathroom door slightly ajar so that the toilet, unflushed from earlier, would be visible when he hurried past. I could hear him sighing and grumbling as he moved through the house, carrying bags of trash toward the garage. "How'd it get this bad again? Where did all this come from?" he muttered, frustration creeping into his voice. His hands shook slightly as he tried to stay composed, but the tension in his movements betrayed him. I peeked around the corner and caught a glimpse of him checking the bathroom, his eyes widening as he noticed the unflushed toilet and the misplaced toiletries. He jumped back slightly, mumbling, "Not again. This is impossible." The worst part, from his perspective, was that Mom wasn't around to witness this. She had gone to her room to make a call, leaving him alone with the chaos he couldn't control. He moved from room to room, panicking as he tried to make everything appear orderly, but with each step, he created more evidence of his panic. I quietly took out my phone and snapped a few photos from the hallway, capturing the perfect mix of his frantic movements and the subtle chaos I had arranged. Each picture told a story: Robert, desperate, scrambling, and clearly out of control. As he stuffed another trash bag into the garage bin, I could hear him muttering under his breath, "She's making me look crazy. She's messing with me. I'll get her back." I smiled to myself, knowing exactly how powerless he really was. Every attempt to regain dignity only made him look worse. I watched him straighten a crooked picture frame and then immediately knock over a small vase in his haste. He jumped back, eyes wide, then muttered something about being careful. He ran to the sink, threw his hands in the air, and stared at the pile of dishes. He muttered, "Why is it like this? I cleaned this morning." His voice trembled slightly, frustration, embarrassment, and desperation mixing together. I felt a rush of satisfaction watching his carefully built facade crumble. Robert, the man who thought he could control everything in our home, was now exposing his true self to anyone who happened to look. His laziness, his carelessness, and his panic were all out in the open, and the neighbors would hear the echoes of his frantic movements soon enough. After several minutes of chaos, Robert finally slammed the kitchen drawer shut, grabbed a few items, and stormed toward the front door. I stayed hidden, watching him struggle to keep his composure, muttering as he left, "She's making me look crazy. I'll get her back. She can't do this to me." I pressed my back against the wall, holding my breath, until I heard the front door slam shut. Then I let out a quiet laugh, my heart still racing with excitement. The game was working. Slowly, carefully, Robert's true colors were being revealed, and it was only a matter of time before Mom would see everything too.
It was 7 p.m. on Wednesday, and the soft glow of the living room lamp at 214 Benton Street, Lakewood, filled the room with a warm, gentle light. Outside, the streets were quiet, the neighborhood calm, but inside, my heart was pounding like a drum. Tonight, everything would change. I had spent hours carefully organizing the evidence. Photos, videos, text messages, each one telling the truth about Robert. His carelessness, his laziness, the little lies, the messy habits, everything. I had even included short clips of his panicked reactions during the brunch and the chaos he had caused the night before. Each piece was perfect, undeniable. Mom, Sarah, sat on the couch beside me, holding a mug of tea. She looked tired, a little worried, and yet trusting. She didn't suspect a thing, and that trust made my chest tighten. I took a deep breath and began showing her the evidence. "Mom, I need you to see this," I said softly, handing her the tablet. I watched as her eyes flicked over the photos first. The messy kitchen, the unflushed toilets, the sticky soaps, the hair and the toothbrush. Her eyebrows knitted together as she scrolled, and I could see confusion growing into shock. Then came the videos. I played the clips one by one. Robert muttering to himself, panicking over minor messes, knocking over plates in his hurry, fumbling around the bathroom. Each video was short but clear, and Mom's face slowly changed as the realization hit her. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Emma, I can't believe this." I nodded, trying to stay calm. "Mom, he's been pretending. He doesn't care about you or this house. He's only interested in Dad's things, the inheritance, everything your husband worked for." Her eyes filled with tears. I thought he was kind. I thought he loved me." I reached over and took her hand gently. "I know, Mom, I know. That's why I had to show you. I didn't want to hurt you, but you needed to see the truth." She sank back into the couch, silent for a moment, staring at the tablet like it held a mirror to reality. Then she shook her head, finally finding her voice. How could I have been so blind?" I squeezed her hand. "It's not your fault, Mom. He's good at hiding it. But now you can see clearly. He's been lying all along." The front door opened suddenly, and Robert walked in, humming like nothing had happened. His confident smile faded when he saw Mom holding the tablet. "Sarah, what's going on?" he asked, trying to sound casual, but the unease in his voice betrayed him. Mom's voice was steady but cold. "Robert, I think it's time we had a talk." Robert's eyes flicked to me for a split second, then back to Mom. His mouth opened, and he tried to explain, "You don't understand, Sarah. It's not what it looks like." I watched Mom's expression harden, the heartbreak in her eyes mixing with a new determination. For the first time, I saw the strength she had always carried hidden beneath her kindness. "Robert," she said firmly, "I've seen enough. I trusted you, but I see the truth now. You've been pretending, and I won't let that continue in my house." Robert's confident stance wavered. His face went pale as he realized Mom wasn't buying his excuses. I could see the panic creeping into his eyes, and I knew we were finally at the turning point. I stayed quiet, letting Mom confront him while I watched the pieces fall into place. For weeks, I had planned, observed, and prepared. Tonight, everything was finally being revealed. Friday night had fallen over 214 Benton Street, Lakewood, and the quiet Belmar neighborhood was sprinkled with the soft glow of streetlights. Inside, though, the house was anything but quiet. My pulse raced as I moved from room to room, double-checking the last details of the trap I had set for Robert. Every mess was placed with purpose, every accident staged perfectly. In the bathroom, I had subtly left the mat in a way that would shift when he stepped on it. The toilet seat had a faint smear I had prepared earlier, and his favorite face cloth hung slightly askew, just enough to catch his attention. The kitchen counters were cluttered with small piles of unwashed dishes and leftover snacks, but arranged so that he would trip over or knock something down if he tried to tidy them in his usual panicked way. The living room had objects moved slightly off their usual spots, remote switched, and a strategically placed chair blocking the hallway. Everything was silent now, waiting. I hid behind the corner near the staircase, my heart thumping. Mom, Sarah, was in the shadows of the hallway, quietly watching, her eyes wide with anticipation. She had promised to stay out of sight, letting me handle this final step. I could see her hands gripping the armrests of the chair, a faint smile tugging at her lips. The front door opened and Robert walked in, humming to himself, confident as ever. His jacket hung loosely on his shoulders, and he carried a briefcase as if nothing had happened earlier in the week. "Everything looks fine tonight," he muttered under his breath, stepping into the kitchen. Immediately, he caught the cluttered counters and furrowed his brow. His voice rose slightly. Why is it like this again?" He moved cautiously, picking up a dish, then knocking over a cup, sending it clattering to the floor. He jumped back, muttering, "Not again! This is impossible!" I stifled a laugh, watching as he tiptoed toward the bathroom. He didn't notice the mat just yet. His hand reached for the face cloth, lifting it carefully, then recoiled at the faint smear. His eyes widened and he muttered, "Seriously? What is doing this?" Mom was silent behind me, but I could see the pride in her eyes. She knew the truth now. She saw how clever this plan was, how Robert's carefully maintained confidence was slowly unraveling. Next, he stepped into the living room. He tried to act casual, but the displaced chair caught his foot and he stumbled, barely catching himself on the arm of the sofa. He muttered, "This house, I can't," and then tripped over a small pile of laundry I had left in the hallway, landing lightly on his hands. I could hardly hold back my laughter as he scrambled to his feet, embarrassed, looking around as if invisible hands were tormenting him. He ran back to the kitchen, trying to straighten dishes and counters, only to knock over a bag of chips, scattering crumbs across the floor. His face was red and his eyes darted everywhere, panic rising. I peeked around the corner and whispered to Mom, "Watch this! It's about to get even better!" Robert's final attempt to regain control ended when he rushed to the bathroom again, only to find the door locked. I had latched it carefully beforehand. He pounded lightly, yelling, "Let me in! What is going on in this house?" He spun around, frustrated, and tried to open the living room closet door, also locked. His confident demeanor was completely gone. He looked ridiculous, red-faced, muttering incoherently. I could see him finally breaking. His hands trembled, his voice rising, a mixture of anger, embarrassment, and desperation. "I'm done. I'm leaving." Mom emerged from the shadows, her voice calm but firm. "If you leave, you can't come back, Robert. It's time you face the consequences of your actions." He froze, glancing at both of us, realizing that this wasn't just chaos. This was exposure. Every little prank, every trap, every carefully documented mess had led to this moment. He was powerless. The Saturday sun poured over 214 Benton Street, Lakewood, casting a warm glow over the Belmar neighborhood. The hum of a moving truck outside filled the air, signaling that the end of Robert's reign of chaos was finally here. My heart raced as I watched him shuffle around the living room, dragging boxes and bags, stuffing his belongings into the truck with a mixture of anger and embarrassment written all over his face. He tried to look composed, but every movement betrayed him. I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he hesitated before picking up even the smallest item. The chair he had tripped over the night before still sat slightly askew in the corner, a silent reminder of the clever traps that had unraveled him. Mom, Sarah, stood quietly near the doorway, her arms crossed, but her eyes calm. She had said nothing since this morning, letting me handle the final steps. I didn't need her words. The satisfaction in her gaze said it all. She knew that everything had been done carefully, without hurting her feelings, and now justice was finally unfolding. I stayed back, letting Robert do the heavy lifting, watching his every flustered movement. I could see him glance repeatedly at the house, as if expecting the walls themselves to betray him again. My lips curved into a small, quiet smile. It had taken patience, observation, and careful planning, but this was the payoff, the moment where his arrogance and laziness could no longer hide. He muttered under his breath, probably blaming the moving process or the boxes themselves. How did it get like this? Everything's a mess. His words were meaningless. He couldn't place the clever design behind the chaos that had exposed him. Every failed step, every stumble from the previous nights replayed in his mind, and now he had to leave. I stepped closer, keeping my tone calm and casual. "Looks like you're all packed," I said, almost like a neutral observer. He turned slowly, eyes narrowing. I could see the fury mixed with shame, the sense of defeat. He opened his mouth, likely to argue, but no words came. The humiliation, the realization that he had lost control over the household, and the clever way Mom and I had handled him left him speechless. Mom finally spoke, softly but with authority. "Robert, this house isn't yours to run. You can leave now, and we'll move forward." He threw one last glance in my direction, a glare that held anger, resentment, and perhaps a hint of threat. But it was powerless, weak compared to the truth that had been revealed. He stomped out to the truck, slamming doors and tossing boxes in, the sound echoing in the quiet street. I watched him for a long moment as he climbed into the cab of the moving truck. His movements were stiff, almost robotic, a shadow of the confident man who had first walked into our home. The neighbors peeked curiously from across the street, whispers floating on the light breeze. I knew they were witnessing the final act, the triumph of patience and cleverness over entitlement. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Months of tension, sleepless nights, planning and observing had finally come to an end. But I stayed calm, keeping my victory quiet. Mom's feelings were delicate, and I didn't want to overshadow her own awakening. She had seen the truth now, and the bond between us felt stronger than ever. The truck started to roll slowly down the street, Robert sitting rigidly in the driver's seat. He threw one last glance in my direction, his eyes flashing with something I couldn't quite name, frustration, bitterness, or maybe the faintest recognition that he had been outsmarted. My chest tightened just a little at that glare, a silent acknowledgement that while he had left, the story wasn't entirely over. The morning sun spilled golden light across 214 Benton Street, Lakewood, warming the Belmar neighborhood and casting gentle shadows over the lawn. Inside, the house was calm for the first time in months. The chaos, the tension, the secret battles, all had finally faded into a quiet sense of victory.
I sat at the kitchen table with Mom, Sarah, sipping our coffee as the aroma of freshly toasted bread filled the air. It felt surreal. For so long, I had carried the frustration and the weight of Robert's laziness, his entitlement, and the way he tried to take over our home. But now, watching him gone, the house felt like ours again. Safe, familiar, and peaceful. Mom's eyes met mine, soft and warm, and she smiled. "Emma, I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice quiet but full of emotion. "You opened my eyes. I didn't see what was happening right in front of me." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Mom, I just wanted to protect this home, protect you, and protect Dad's memory. That's all." She squeezed my hand, a tear glinting in her eye. "You did more than that. You saved us from someone who didn't belong here." I laughed softly, a little embarrassed by the seriousness of it all. "I guess he got exactly what he deserved," I said, thinking about every small trap, every clever little prank, every moment of patience and planning. It had been satisfying, yes, but it had also been careful. No one got hurt, and the truth came out perfectly. Outside, I could hear the soft hum of neighbors talking, whispers traveling along the quiet streets. I knew that Robert's reputation had finally reached them too. His laziness, his entitlement, and the way he tried to manipulate Mom. It was all out in the open now. Even the neighbors were shaking their heads, sharing stories about his comical frustrations and repeated mishaps. Karma had worked in the most subtle, satisfying way. I looked around the kitchen at the familiar counters and the sunlight spilling across the tiles and felt a wave of relief. Months of careful observation, of small battles and clever planning had paid off. This wasn't about anger. It was about justice. Quiet, clever, and patient justice. Mom chuckled softly, breaking the silence. "I think it's safe to say the house feels like ours again, don't you?" I smiled, watching her light brighten the room. "Yes, Mom, it really does." For a moment, everything felt perfect. The messes were gone, the tricks had worked, and the house was ours again. And Dad's legacy was protected. But more than that, I felt proud of being patient, smart, and strategic. I had learned that sometimes confrontation isn't the best answer. Sometimes the clever approach, the subtle one, wins in ways that are both satisfying and lasting. I glanced out the window at the street. The sun glinted off the trees lining the Belmar neighborhood, and a few neighbors waved as they walked by. I knew they had noticed the change, the calm, the balance restored. And somewhere deep down, I could imagine Robert watching from wherever he was, powerless and exposed. I turned back to Mom, who was now laughing quietly at something I had said. The house was filled with warmth again, with trust, with love, and with the quiet satisfaction of justice served.